Hi everyone, my name is Emmy Amarati and I'm Assistant Director of our ACU Online Writing Center, and I'm here today with my wonderful colleague, Christy Apostle, who's one of our tutors. Say hi, Christy.
Thank you, Emmy. Hi, everybody. I'm Christy Apostle, and I am a tutor in the Online Writing Center.
Welcome to Don't Do This, a webinar on how to avoid plagiarism. This afternoon, we'll be addressing how to avoid plagiarism in the context of both your written work and your speeches or presentations, with our usual focus on APA style. Keep in mind that when we publish this webinar recording, we'll also publish a link to the slide deck for the webinar, and the links to the resources in the slide deck will be active. So here are our learning objectives for the webinar. Today we're going to use COMO 120's Week 1 Assignment 1, The Elephant in the Room, to understand the concept of plagiarism, craft proper attributions in APA style, and now I will pass it off to Christy so we can tackle our learning objective 1.
Our first learning objective for this webinar is understanding the concept of plagiarism. So, what is plagiarism? Let's consider a definition. Plagiarism is the act of presenting the words, ideas, or images of another as one's own. It denies authors credit where credit is due. Beyond these serious disadvantages, plagiarism raises other concerns. It removes credit from the author of the content. It opposes ethical responsibilities of academic scholarship, and it hinders future researchers who may read your work from referring to the original source. Since plagiarism is so concerning, being aware of how it occurs is important to avoid intentionally or unintentionally plagiarizing someone else's work. Plagiarism occurs in a number of different ways. Some may seem obvious, and others may be surprising. For example, copying full papers, you probably know, is considered plagiarism. Writing someone's ideas in your own words without crediting the source is also plagiarism. Using another's passages, sentences, or paragraphs word for word as if they are your own is plagiarism. Presenting your own prior work, so something you'd already written, as if it is new and original, is also considered plagiarism. Changing only a few words in a passage that you get from another author and otherwise leaving it the same can be counted as plagiarism. Additionally, using images without attribution, if they're clearly credited to someone else, constitutes as plagiarism. But wait, what if you review the ways plagiarism can occur and realize, I just plagiarized? Don't freak out. You remember that definition of plagiarism? Here's how it should look when properly cited. So here I have the quotation marks, and I've cited the author, a group author, the American Psychological Association, the publication date, and the page. So now we're safe. Okay, now that we've seen how to reverse plagiarism on the definition used for this webinar, let's consider a variety of strategies for avoiding plagiarism. You can refine paraphrases by restructuring the original passage and including more language in your own words. You can use quotation marks for direct quotes, like we just saw, and you can use attributions and in-text citations for quotes and paraphrases. You can check a Turnitin report for potentially plagiarized content to reduce it through paraphrases or omissions. You should cite images if credited to an author and they're not under Creative Commons. And by the way, the painting you saw was from Creative Commons. And you can also check with a professor if you wish to use content that you wrote in the past and you want to use it in another assignment.
And this is Emmy again. Now, since Christy has walked us through what plagiarism is and how to avoid it, we are going to look at our second learning objective, which is how to craft proper attributions in APA style. So an attribution really just means giving proper credit to the person or persons who originated a line of text or an idea. In APA, that act of attributing requires two components, a reference entry and an in-text citation. Before we look at some examples, we're going to summarize what each of these elements is. So by reference entry, we mean it usually begins with the author's last name and year of publication, and it includes additional source information as well, so that the reader can figure out what source exactly you're talking about. In APA, your resources or reference entries are listed on a separate page at the end of your printed text or paper. They can also be listed on a separate ending slide or a handout if you happen to be giving an oral presentation. Component number 2 is our in-text citation, which usually consists in APA of the author's last name and the year of publication. It appears in or in parentheses after a sentence in your text, and if you're doing a presentation, you can adapt that citation to read it aloud. While we were reviewing those slides, you may have noticed that both the reference entry and the in-text citation begin with the last name of the source's author and the work's year of publication if you're working in APA. The inclusion of the author and the date in your written or spoken text is what allows your reader to match the citation to the reference at the end of your APA formatted paper or presentation. So, for example, if you quote Smith 2025 in your text, the reader can then check the references list and look for Smith 2025 to find the full publication information for the source. So now let's quickly look at some examples of what APA references look like. In APA, the format of the reference is going to vary based on the source type and characteristics, even though they all start most of the time with the author's name and the date. So in the first example, which is a textbook by Gunn, we started with Gunn's last name and first initial, followed by the year of publication, 2021. Next, we put the title in italics, the edition information, and the publisher. That tells us what book it is, and we know who published it. So we can find that book anywhere that it happens to be, whether it's in a bookstore or online somewhere. Next, we have an example of a periodical. In this case, it's a magazine article. We start with the author's last name and first initial again, Cinto, J. We have the year of publication, 2017, but this time we also added a more specific date information because this magazine is published with multiple issues per year, and we need to know which month's edition it was. Next, we include both the article title and the magazine title, with only the magazine title in italics so the reader knows what article Cinto wrote and what publication it was published in. Last, we know that this article was published in the online version of the magazine, so we include the URL where the article is available online so the reader knows where to find it. The third example here is a little unique. It's a YouTube video. For a YouTube video, we actually consider the author to be the account that published it. So the reference opens here with the account name edX series. Next, we include the full date the video was published, 2021, April 5th. The video title in italics comes next, and that's followed by the word video in square brackets to signal what kind of media it is. And last, the reader needs to know where to find it again, so we put YouTube and the URL so the reader can locate it online. So again, all these references are different because the sources have different characteristics and different information the reader needs to know about them to find them. But they all begin with the author and year, so the reader can key the in-text citation to the reference. And now we keep talking about citations that include author and date, so let's look at what those look like too. Because APA citations usually consist of the author date, we say that they follow author date format. If we look at the reference for Gunn's book here, we can guess that a citation is going to include Gunn's last name and the year 2021. So we're going to look at several different configurations that these author date citations can take. First, we mentioned that in APA, in-text citations can go in parentheses after the sentence in the text that contains the borrowed idea. Here, I've taken an idea from Gunn's textbook, but I rewrote it in my own words. Acknowledging use of another person's ideas supports a speaker's credibility. At the end of that sentence, I put Gunn, 2021 in parentheses. And that's it. That's how my reader now knows to look for the reference by Gunn in my references list. I can use the same format if I directly quote, but in the second example with the quote, I've added some extra pieces. I've put quotation marks around the words from Gunn that I directly copied. Credibility is, quote, undermined when you claim to share knowledge or expertise that you took from someone else, end quote. Then I added some new information to the parenthetical citation after the quote. I have Gunn, comma, 2021, comma. Then I also have the page number. This is because when we quote another author's exact words in our written work, APA guidelines indicate we need to provide locator information along with the author and year in the citation. The locator information in this case is a page number, and that will help my reader find the quote in its original context in Gunn's textbook. And now that we've looked at how to form in-text citations using parentheses, let's look at the other way that you can do it in APA, because there is another way to cite. We call this second type of citation a narrative citation because it involves placing the author's name right in our narrative or sentence text. In other words, the author's name becomes part of the story you're telling in your work. In this example, I've cited the same paraphrase of Gunn by naming Gunn right in the sentence. Gunn, then the year 2021 in parentheses, wrote that acknowledging use of another person's ideas supports a speaker's credibility. In both these options, parenthetical or narrative, you'll notice that the year always follows the author's name, whether the author's name is in parentheses or if it's in part of your sentence. We can use the narrative citation format if we're directly quoting. We can still write Gunn, then the year 2020 in parentheses before the quote. Gunn 2021 observed. But we still need to add that locator information. So in this case, we put the page number in parentheses after the quotation. One thing you'll notice in both the narrative citations is that I've used past tense verbs. Gunn wrote and Gunn observed. When we write or present in APA style, we are conceptualizing that this author did his work in the past. So we use past tense when we talk about his work. The citation examples we've been looking at pertain to when we're writing a paper or even printing citations on slides in the body of a presentation. But how do these translate into oral citations, or what we would say aloud to create attributions as we're presenting or giving a speech? If we need to consider APA style when we're speaking instead of writing, we can easily adapt our written narrative citations. So, for instance, we can say in 2021, Gunn wrote that acknowledging use of another person's ideas supports a speaker's credibility. Or Gunn observed in 2021 that credibility is undermined when you claim to share knowledge or expertise that you took from someone else. If you're citing aloud, you don't need to include the page number or the locator information for the direct quote in your oral citation. In other words, I don't need to say page 27 out loud because that would distract listeners from the discussion. And if you happen to be presenting with a slide and you have the direct quote on the slide, it's highly likely that you have the page number on the slide. So the page number in your spoken words would just become redundant. So these are very pared down types of oral citations that have just the author's name. And that's great if you're presenting in a context when you're able to provide a references list for your audience at the end of the slide deck or a separate handout. But if you're speaking in a context that doesn't enable or require full references, or if you're speaking to an unfamiliar or skeptical audience who really needs to understand the credentials of the people whose ideas you're citing, then you probably want to go beyond APA's basic author date oral citation and provide more information about the author and their work. So let's look at a couple of examples of oral citations where we've added additional context and we're still complying with APA guidelines by providing the author's name and the year. So I've got Joshua Gunn, a professor of communication studies for the University of Texas, wrote in the 2021 textbook Speechcraft that acknowledging use of another person's ideas supports a speaker's credibility. Second, it says communication studies professor Joshua Gunn observed in his 2021 textbook Speechcraft that credibility is, quote, undermined when you claim to share knowledge or expertise that you took from someone else, end quote. So in both these oral citations, I've added the author's full name and noted that they are a professor of communication studies. I also noted that the work I'm quoting is a specific textbook. So with this information, even without a references list, the audience should be able to identify and verify the source. And they should also understand that Gunn is an authoritative figure qualified to discuss plagiarism. Before Christy takes us through the elephant in the room assignment and we do some practice, let's look at one more example of APA style citations using the video from the edX series 2021. So remember that from a perspective of APA formatting, the author here is not Dr. Jenkins, the person speaking in the video. Instead, it's the people represented by the YouTube account that published it. So for APA compliance, a parenthetical citation in a piece of writing would need to refer to edX series, 2021. If I wanted to refer to the speaker, I could also name them in my sentence, as shown in this example. So I've got Jenkins emphasized, still using a past tense verb because he said this in the past. Jenkins emphasized that speakers must perform research to verify the accuracy of information, parentheses, edX series 2021. If for some reason I felt that I needed to draw the reader's attention to the edX series itself in my text, I could use a narrative citation format. In an edX series 2021 presentation, Jenkins emphasized that speakers must perform research to verify the accuracy of information. So notice that because the author here is the edX series, I put the year 2021 immediately after their name in the sentence. I didn't put it after Jenkins's name because Jenkins is not considered the author here. A simple oral citation for an APA-style presentation could similarly refer to the YouTube account name and the year, and if we want to mention Jenkins, we could put that all in our spoken text. In a 2021 edX series presentation, Jenkins emphasized blah, blah, blah. Last, what if I'm giving a speech or a presentation and I want to present a fuller citation that complies with APA guidelines, but also provides context and clarifies the authority of our speaker? In that case, I could say something like this. In a 2021 edX series presentation, Keith Jenkins, a communications professor with the Rochester Institute of Technology, emphasized blah, blah, blah. So
Hey everyone,
now
Christy here again. Yes,
Christy's
thank you.
back. Yay.
Now let's put all of these helpful strategies that Emmy has been discussing. Let's put all of these into practice. So this is an intro to public speaking assignment, as Emmy mentioned earlier. It's known as the elephant in the room, writing about plagiarism. You can find the assignment at the link provided on this slide. Like most assignments, this one has a central purpose. It's important for today's employee to know how to use technologies to record presentations. And as a speaker, students should understand how plagiarism can occur in speeches so that it can be avoided. Several specific instructions will assist with fulfilling the assignment's purpose. So you should be answering questions with a short video response. And we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about the recording requirements. The questions using this week's reading and resources that you need to answer are based on talking about how you think plagiarism might happen in a speech, commenting on why it might be unethical, talking about how you can avoid plagiarism in the class, and using a minimum of 2 sources in your video. Okay, now let's talk about how to make the actual video. It needs to be 1 to 2 minutes. You can stand up. It's okay to sit down. You should probably just try to be comfortable. You don't need an audience, so you don't need to like gather people around you. You can be by yourself. You can use notes, but try not to read word for word from a script. So you can write a script down, but you wouldn't want to read it like a robot, basically. Speak in a conversational style with those who might be watching your video. You would do oral citations, as Emmy has been reviewing, for any recordings and resources that you use. Here are a couple examples of how to reference sources in a speech, and specifically like the resources and readings for this class. In the textbook Speechcraft, published in 2021, it was said about plagiarism. And according to Dr. Keith Jenkins and his talk in 2021. And so you would finish both of those sentences with your own ideas about the sources. So if you need more information on how to record, you can follow that link on using Zoom to record, or you can follow the link provided on using smartphone computer to record. In addition, there's an instructional video to consult about using Canvas. The assignment includes guidelines and examples for attributing the sources that you use. Although the examples don't exactly follow APA format, which is important to keep in mind for any future assignments that do specifically require APA format. The examples should be useful as you decide how to incorporate sources into your video. So, as we've been discussing, you'll need the title plus the year and the idea you've borrowed, or the author and the year and the idea you've borrowed. So let's look at these. In the textbook Speechcraft, published in 2021, and according to Dr. Keith Jenkins and his talk in 2021. So in the first, we have the title plus the year plus the idea you borrowed. And in the second, we have the author plus the year plus the idea you borrowed. So keep both of those methods in mind. Most ACU assignments, including this one, come with a rubric that you can follow to fine-tune your work. If you want the full 20 points for using the course readings and resources to address how plagiarism might happen in a speech, ensure that you reference the readings and resources and that your response to them is detailed and thorough. Okay, to make an excellent video, as it says here in the rubric, and receive the full 20 points for doing so, follow these steps. You'll want to make sure you clearly appear in the video feed and that you can be heard, so pronounce every word fully. Relax. Remember I said get comfortable. Relax and enjoy the process by sharing your points in a conversational style as if you're talking with a friend or a family member. Remember to extend the video to a length of 1 to 2 minutes. And finally, include at least 2 oral citations, as we've been discussing, based on the examples in the webinar. Now we'll look at some example sources and discuss possible ways to cite them in a speech. Let's start with the Cento source that we've already been looking at. The article title is "What is Plagiarism and How Can You Avoid It?" And it was published in 2017. Emmy, what would we do to cite this source aloud?
Okay. So if we wanted to cite aloud for this course, we could use either the author and the date, or we could use the title and the date. So we could say, Jesse Cento stated in 2017 that blah, blah, blah. Or we could say, according to the article, What is Plagiarism and How Can You Avoid It? Published in 2017, blah, blah, blah. Now, that's for this course where we're using the simple format of the author plus the date or the title plus the date. If we wanted to cite for an APA style presentation, we could use the author and the date. This would be if we are able to provide a reference somehow in a larger sense or another part of the presentation. Cento argued in 2017. If we weren't able to provide a reference, or if we just want to explain why Cento is a great authority on plagiarism and avoiding it, we could say in a 2017 article for the official magazine of Toastmasters International, a public speaking organization, Jesse Sinto asserted. And we know if Sinto is publishing for this magazine from Toastmasters International, that they must be considered an authority by that very important public speaking organization. And now we're going to do another example, and I'm going to ask Christy. Christy, here is another video from the resources for the week. It's ACU Online Doctorate of Organizational Leadership's YouTube channel. They've published a video called Oral Citations, and Dr. Dina Counts is the speaker in the video. So how could we cite that video aloud?
Thank you, Emmy. So we got a couple of options here. Again, if we're doing a speech, we might say the ACU Online Doctorate of Organizational Leadership program shared in 2022 that, or you could introduce a borrowed idea by saying, according to the video oral citations published in 2022. Either of these are excellent options. And now, how would we cite aloud for APA compliance using the same example, the ACU Online Doctorate of Organizational Leadership as the author with the video oral citations? For APA compliance, we would try one of these options. In 2022, the ACU Online Doctorate of Organizational Leadership program shared, or in a 2022 YouTube video from the ACU Online Doctorate of Organizational Leadership program, Dr. Dina Counts observed. So let's wrap up what we've learned for tonight's webinar. We used Como 120's Week 1, Assignment 1, The Elephant in the Room, to understand the concept of plagiarism and craft proper attributions in APA style. And here we have the references for the sources used in this video. We mentioned earlier that if you have a slide presentation, you may want to include a reference slide similar to a references page at the end of a paper. So this is a great example of doing just that based on the sources that we have been discussing. So if you want to find out more about the Online Writing Center, you can check out the Online Writing Center group through the link provided here. You can watch the video we're providing for the steps to make an appointment and submit a paper. Know that we are happy to work with you at any stage of your writing, whether you're brainstorming, you're practicing paraphrases, you're practicing commas, you're in the final draft and you want, another pair of eyes. We will be there for you. There are two types of appointments listed on our schedule. You'll see email and asynchronous appointments. For those, you upload your paper and we send you feedback by email within 24 hours, and you'll see that center report. We also offer Zoom. To schedule one of these, just go to our schedule and click on the Zoom link at your time, and these are listed in Central Time. You're also able to access many writing on our Online Writing Center website. We can find at that link. There is a submission process that you'll undergo for scheduling appointments. First, you will schedule the appointment at WC Online, and then you will upload your paper to the appointment form so the tutor has it ahead of time. If you would like to get in touch with us, there are various ways to do that. You can email us, such as a simple APA question. You can email us at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. As I mentioned, you can schedule an appointment by following the link provided here, and you can visit the Online Writing Center website. We provide various resources that will help your journey as a student. There is an APA course paper template that you can use to um, help format your papers. It's all done for you at the first link on this page. You can also consult our YouTube channel. It has many other webinars like the one that you're listening to now, for example. And we have an online writing center blog in which various people who work for the online writing center offer helpful tips and advice in blog posts. If you are interested in finding more webinars like this one, you can check our webinar recordings on our website at the first link provided on this page, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Some upcoming webinars that you can look out for are strategies for successful college writing and intro to the AP 7th edition. Actually, those are past webinars.
Well, we'll do them in upcoming terms too again, but these are
That's
our
true.
most recent versions of them. Both very helpful.
So thank you for joining us today, and be sure to stay in touch with the Online Writing Center.
Thank you, everyone, for learning with us today. And thank you, Christy, for presenting with me. I always love when I get to work with you.
Thanks, Emmy.
Bye,
Wonderful.
everyone. Thank
Bye.
you.